This call is now being recorded.
Hello, Year 11 students, and specifically, hello, Year 11 students that are considering studying A-level biology as part of their future career progression and part of their A-levels. By the end of this video, hopefully you'll have more of an idea of what A-level biology at Oaklands is like, and hopefully, regardless of how sure you are about this option, you will be a little bit more secure in your decision and basically have learnt something and have some more information. In starting to think about this video and starting to plan it and think about the kind of things that I was going to say, I tried to ask myself the same question, basically. I tried to ask myself, why did I study A-level biology? Why did I then go on to do a degree in biology? What was it that attracted me to this subject? And it was quite a hard one for me to answer, actually, because many people like me have been really, really interested in biology for pretty much their whole life. I cannot remember a time when I wasn't fascinated by biology and when it wasn't one of my real big passions. To try and answer why or where it started, I actually contacted my mum and I asked, what was the first time that you thought that you noticed that I was really interested in biology, that I was really interested in the science of life? And she drew my attention back to this image. And this is an illustrated image that was in a Ladybird book that I got for Christmas, I think when I was about age 3. And it was a Ladybird book about some of the largest and smallest things on planet Earth. And I remember looking at this illustration and thinking that, you know, that can't be real. It's made up. Someone's come up with this. There can't possibly be a tree on planet Earth that is large enough for a car to drive through its base. That is so big that humans have cut a hole, a tunnel, through its trunk, through its base, and it's big enough that it's still stable, still alive, and a car can drive through that hole. That can't be real. But it is real. That exists. That's a Californian redwood. And although we would take a very dim view in the modern day of sort of, like modifying something endangered and such a thing of natural beauty by cutting a hole through it like that, I found that unbelievably fascinating. I thought it was magical almost that there could be a tree that big on planet Earth, but there is. And that sparked my interest in biology. That's exactly the kind of thing that I wanted to know and learn more about. How can that possibly be the case? How can something that size exist? How can that tree get water from the ground? How can its leaves, hundreds of meters up in the canopy, survive? I can explain that now comfortably because of A-level biology. And there they are. There's a picture of these trees. Just look at the size of them. You can see a person there for comparison. These are the largest trees on Earth, Californian redwoods. Imagine something that size. Imagine the quantity of water and nutrients from the soil that are required to sustain something of that size. Really, really amazing. Other things that fascinated me. I was a big fan of computer games. I remember playing Super Mario. And those of you that have played that before might have remembered that there are cartoon versions of these kind of mushrooms in Super Mario. And again, it fascinated me when I saw them out on a walk once and realized that they're actually a real thing. There are mushrooms that look like that, these bright red fruiting bodies with white spots on the top. And it fascinated me that that was something real, that was something natural. You know, why was it so brightly coloured? And again, it was something that I read about, and now it's something that I can explain. It's warning coloration. The mushroom has developed and evolved that incredibly bright, strong colour to make it incredibly obvious as a warning to anything that might eat it. Because if they do eat it, it contains a very, very powerful toxin that can have really significant effects. So it's a protection mechanism. It's involved as warning coloration to protect it from potential from things that would eat it, from animals that would eat it. Something else that was in the same book was this flower here, which is widely held to be the largest flower of any plant on Earth, and it's called Rafflesia. And you might notice from the background that it doesn't look like many other plants. It doesn't have any leaves, and that's because it doesn't have any. It exists on the forest floor, and this is a parasitic plant, which many scientists believe is the reason that it can be so large. It's not using its own resources. It's using the resources of other plants. So why not grow an absolute huge flower? Why not plow all of that sugar, energy, and resources into this massive, massive, massive flower to massively aid in reproduction and attract flies and pollinators, etc. Again, something that I can easily explain due to A-level biology. Another thing that fascinated me, watching David Attenborough's Private Life of Plants in the mid-90s and learning about these things, pitcher plants. And again, it seemed to me like science fiction that a type of plant could be a carnivore, that there are plants that actually actively eat insects, that are adapted to attract, devour, and consume the biological molecules stored up in insects in a way that animals do. Now, you can see that my passions tended to be about plants and fungi. But maybe yours aren't. Maybe yours are about something completely different, and that's fine. Maybe your passions are to do with medicine. Maybe you want to be able to fully understand and explain how an ECG, an electrocardiogram, works in hospitals. Maybe you want to know how those things are generated. Maybe you want to fully understand something to do with human biology. Maybe your passion is about cellular respiration. You know, how is it that Usain Bolt can run at that unbelievable world record breaking speed, I should say? Or maybe it's in something completely different. Maybe it's more advanced, something that's only really been around since the sort of late 80s, 90s. DNA sequencing that's changed the world of evolutionary biology, that's changed the world of science, of crime, of paternity, of all sorts of different things. You know, maybe that is what you were most interested in: DNA sequencing and DNA technologies. Or maybe it's something completely different. Maybe it's about evolution. Maybe you want to understand all about the history of life on Earth, straight from the origins of life to all the great diversity of multicellular life that we see on planet Earth today. Or maybe it's something that I haven't mentioned. Who knows? But biology is endlessly fascinating. It's a subject for interesting and interested people. It contains a huge amount of learning, a huge amount of knowledge, and a huge amount of information that applies to almost every area of modern life. It truly is the science of living things. It's about our very existence, and it's unbelievably interesting and useful in a number of different areas. Now, one thing that people might be particularly interested in when they're picking their A-levels is about careers, which is really, really important. I think it's supremely important to pick things that you're interested in, that you know that you're going to do well in, but it's also important to have a sense of the kind of things that you might want to go off and do in the future to make sure that you're not limiting yourself at this stage. Now, one really obvious area that biology is really important for is medicine. Any area of medicine, biology is an absolute standard prerequisite for that. Medicine is a branch of life sciences in a way, because it's about the treatment and support of living things. It's about, you know, the science and the biology of humans. It's the therapeutic aspect of that. So all medicine, any type of medicine, really does require some level of biology in some way. So any medical career is benefited by choosing biology A-level. But science, working as a scientist in the field, a microbiologist, a forensic scientist, a DNA sequencer, a researcher, any level, any branch of lab science is going to be massively improved by a biology A-level. Dentistry, another branch of medicine, is going to be massively supported by biology too. But there's loads and loads of other things, working for New Scientist, being a biological or a scientific journalist, being an amazing teacher. Just joking, but being a teacher of science would be supported by doing biology A-level. So really, any of these careers and many, many more are supported by a biology A-level. But even if you're not sure what you want to do in the future, which, in many ways I'm still not, that's fine. There are many other reasons to choose biology. It doesn't mean that you have to have a set idea yet, just a couple of them. Links with careers, as I've said: medicine, pharmacology, veterinary science, even more there. It's really well respected. It's a challenging A-level, so it's rightly one of the most academically respected A-levels. And by that I mean, whatever choice you make after this, whatever degree you want to do, whatever job you want to do, anything will respect biology, because everyone knows that it's high challenge, that it's really academic, and that it requires a lot of work. So having a good A-level in biology will really open doors to anything else. It builds really important skills. It combines analytical skills, logical thinking, maths, extended writing, and factual knowledge. Arguably, amongst all of the sciences, it's the one that fits most comfortably with a range of other subjects, because you can do biology alongside other sort of written academic essay-based subjects, or you could do it as a suite of sciences with maths and things like that. And it really does complement lots of different things because it's a real multi-skill discipline. But as I was saying at the beginning, the main thing is it's interesting. You know, it's every single lesson will answer questions that most people who don't know about science and don't know about biology would not be able to answer. How do our genes work? How do organisms evolve over time? How are our lungs adapted to their function? You know, the list is endless. Every single lesson will equip you with the ability to answer questions about our very existence and about the world around us. And that, I would argue, is the best reason to choose an A-level in biology. Biology is also, it's worth noting, one of these facilitating subjects. That's a phrase that the Russell Group universities use. So the Russell Group universities publish a list of so-called facilitating subjects. They recommend that students intending to apply for Russell Group spaces should take at least 2 of these. So this is a list of subjects that the top universities in the country say, if you want to maximize your chances of coming here, do at least 2 of these. And those subjects are maths, further maths, English literature, physics, biology, chemistry, geography, history, and languages. Now, those are the sort of top tier A-level subjects. So as you can see, biology is one of them, which leads into what I was saying about it being a well-respected academic choice. So I've talked to you a lot about the reasons why, but now I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about the logistics of biology at Oaklands, about what the course is like and what you can expect when you study it. Now, as I'm sure you well know, the vast majority of academic A-levels are now linear. Now, what that means is that you do all of your assessments at the end of the course. So at the end of the second year, as it currently stands, you will sit 3 exam papers and they will be 100% of your mark. So your entire grade comes from the exams at the end of the course. Now, that's not to say that we don't do any practical work. We do lots of practical work. We do what's called a practical endorsement. In order for your exams to generate a grade, you also have to have achieved what's called a practical endorsement, which is a pass or fail system. So based on 12 practicals that you do across 2 years, you will get signed off by your teacher as being proficient in practical skills. And that gives you what's called a practical endorsement, and that gives you access to the grades that comes from your exams. So your grades overall come from 3 exams plus a pass or fail practical endorsement based on 12 practicals. Now, as I've already stated, really, the coverage of this course is really, really broad. You study a huge variety of different areas of biology. It's really broad, from microbiology to genetics to evolution to ecosystems to physiology, all sorts of different things. It's really, really interesting and really broad. Now, we study the OCR specification. That's the exam board that we've chosen. The reason for that is because the choice of content is broad, engaging, and the structure of examinations, we think, allows for greater stretch of the most able students. So for people that really invest in this subject, there's a really big payoff in terms of stretching the top end. There's the real ability for the most able students to really show what they can do on this course, which is why it is such a good choice. As you can see from this table, the content overview, the content is split into 6 teaching modules. Now, module 1 is actually tested across the 2 years because that's the one that's related to the practical skills. So that is taught throughout. It's taught and delivered through all of the different practicals that we do, and then a range of different practical-based learning points that come from each of the other units. So module 1 is taught throughout and it's spread across the 2 years. Module 2 is what we call Foundations in Biology, and this is where you would begin in terms of your classroom learning at the beginning of the course. Now, this tells you all things sort of, you know, it's called Foundations because the rest of the course rests upon that foundation. It's the necessary base learning off which to learn about more complex ideas. So it's things like the structure of the biological molecules that all life is based on, cells and cell structure, different types of microscopy, enzymes, DNA, proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, all of these things. Foundations in Biology is where we start. Module 3 is about exchange and transport. It's about breathing, and exchanging gases with the environment, and then about how those respiratory gases, along with the products of digestion, are transported around the bodies of large, complex multicellular animals, and about comparing different systems in different organisms. Module 4 is biodiversity, evolution and disease. Quite a broad one, this one. In biodiversity, we learn about how we measure biodiversity in different areas of the earth, so about how we measure the diversity of life in different areas. We also look at evolution by natural selection, Darwin's theories, how they've developed over time, the evidence for that, etc. And in disease, we learn about all the different types of pathogens that cause disease. We look at a few specific case studies, and we look at how organisms are adapted to resist infection by pathogens and resist disease. Module 5 is about communication, homeostasis and energy. This is a really detailed scientific unit that I personally find really, really interesting. The word communication is because we learn about how in multicellular animals like ourselves, different parts of the body communicate with other parts. One example of that is the nervous system of mammals, which we go through in quite a lot of detail. But other examples are things like the endocrine system and hormonal communication in organisms like plants that don't have a nervous system. So it's about hormonal and nervous communication. Homeostasis is all about maintaining constant internal environments. So we learn about how we do that, particularly in endotherms such as mammals that maintain a set of conditions on the internal environment. And when we come to study energy, that's why we're learning about the basic fundamental processes that store up energy in molecules and then release energy from those molecules again, mainly photosynthesis and respiration. The final module, Genetics, Evolution and Ecosystems, looks at in real detail about our understanding of genetics, how that's changed over time from the very first pioneers of genetics, from Mendel, all the way up to DNA sequencing, pyrosequencing, the most really up-to-date, brand new techniques that we use in the modern day. We also go back and look again at ecosystems in a slightly different way. We often do that with a trip, where we go and stay at a field centre and we actually learn firsthand about how we collect information from ecosystems. It's a wonderful course. I cannot recommend it enough for people that are interested and able. It's a really, really good course. And if you need any specific advice on whether you would be suitable individually, I'm sure you can contact me or your class teachers to get some extra advice on that. I do want to run through quickly what's called the assessment objectives in biology. Now, basically, every question you will get on the exams is sorted into one of these assessment objectives. And every single year, the exam board makes sure that the weighting of each of these assessment objectives is the same. Now, it's worth going through these because it does demonstrate slightly that the A-level is a bit of a jump from the GCSE. And it does require a slightly different method of learning that we will coach you through. Now, AO1, which is Assessment Objective 1, is to demonstrate knowledge and understanding of scientific ideas, processes, techniques, and procedures. Now, I like to think of Assessment 1 as being asked to use knowledge in the same way that you learnt it. So, producing some knowledge that you've remembered in the same way that it went in. So that could be remembering a keyword, remembering the name of a piece of equipment, remembering a process, etc. AO2, which is Assessment Objective 2, is to apply knowledge and understanding of scientific ideas, processes, techniques, and procedures in a theoretical context, in a practical context, and when handling different types of data. Now, the key word here is apply. Now, what that means is that you're using knowledge that you have, but in an unfamiliar situation. So you'll be given in the exam an example that you've not heard of before, or something that you've not seen, or a set of data that you've not come across. And you will be asked to explain it using a basis of knowledge that you know. That's Assessment Objective 2. Assessment Objective 3 is about analysing, interpreting and evaluating scientific information, ideas and evidence, including in relation to issues. 2, make judgments and reach conclusions, develop and refine practical design and procedures. Now, it's this one where most of your knowledge from the practicals is going to come in, because this is about using your understanding of how scientific processes work in order to make conclusions from data, and also to look at practical designs and say how you could do it better. So your practical work will feed mainly into Assessment Objective 3. Now, if we look at the weightings, you can see along the bottom, I'll go through the different names of the papers and what's in them shortly. What you can see along the bottom there is that consistently, the percentages from the different assessment objectives are kept constant or relatively constant. Assessment objective 1, which is what we said is basically remembering things, that's only accounts for about 1/3 of the marks in A-level biology. Whereas nearly half of the marks come from assessment objective 2, which is applying. So we can already see the kind of skills that we're going to need here. We're going to need to learn the scientific process. We're going to need to learn to be analytical thinkers who can look at new situations and work out what's going on, come up with suggestions based on a foundation of secure knowledge of known examples. Assessment objective 3, which is related to making conclusions and refining practical procedures, is about 1/4 of the paper. Okay, so you might be wondering what the actual papers are like. So as we've said, all of your marks comes from 3 papers at the end of the 2-year process. Paper 1 is called Biological Processes. It's out of 100 marks. Biological Processes tests foundations in biology, module 1, and then it also tests the module 3, which is your exchange and transport, and module 5, which is communication, homeostasis, and energy. And it's all about biological processes. It contains all the sorts of physiology. It contains all the information about how different parts of the body work, the nervous system, the hormonal communication system, etc. Biological processes. Biological diversity is the second paper, and it also is out of 100 marks. This also tests foundations in biology and module 1 as well, which runs through the entire course. But it also tests module 4, which is about biodiversity and disease and evolution, and module 6, which is about your genetics and evolution and ecosystems. Finally, though, we have a paper called Unified Biology. Now, Unified Biology, when I was talking earlier about the ability to stretch the most able students, it really comes in this paper. It's a hard paper, but people can do very, very well on it. It's out of 70 marks. It's shorter than the others. And Unified Biology is a completely synoptic paper. Now, that means that anything from any part of the course can come up. And it tends to be extended response questions, extended calculations, practical questions, etc. That's the structure of the course. Therefore, that means that your final total mark is out of 370. That's what generates your final grade. So what can you do between now and when you start the course in September? The main thing that I would recommend is to make the most of the access, the unprecedented access that you have at the moment to programs and, you know, video resources. One of the best types of video resource for biology, I would argue, are the David Attenborough programs. Now, if you're not familiar with David Attenborough, now's the time to get familiar. He has a whole suite of programs about, you know, like over 10 series that you can access on BBC iPlayer, Netflix, or other online streaming services. Now, essentially, all of these natural history programs that essentially documents the life of different animals on Earth, you can consider them to ultimately be about evolution and specialization and adaptation, because it's those processes that have produced all of these wonderful examples. So watching these and familiarizing yourself with the struggles of animals and plants in the natural world and their adaptations would be absolutely fantastic. But there are many other resources too. There's a series on BBC Two that you can access through BBC iPlayer called Horizon, which is all about modern advancements in science. In terms of books, 2 titles that you might like to get either out of a local library or purchase. One of them is called Life at the Extremes. It's called The Science of Survival by an author called Francis Ashcroft. That's particularly helpful for people that are interested in human biology. And also a book by someone called Steve Jones called Almost Like a Whale, which is an updated version, it's marketed as an updated version of Charles Darwin's original text, The Origin of Species, which is arguably the foundation of all modern biology. Doing any of those things would be really useful. It would also be very, very useful to make sure that you have a secure knowledge of your GCSE biology. That's obviously essential. We're assuming that you do have a secure knowledge going in. Now, all of your GCSE biology knowledge is relevant to A-level biology, but there are some bits that you might want to make sure that you've got a particularly sharp focus on before we start. One thing that I will say, just to make it very, very clear, is we do not want, I should say teach, not teacher. We do not want you to teach yourself A-level content. Leave that to us. We don't want you to be getting, the whole idea of reading ahead and starting to learn now is not a good idea. You'll teach yourself misconceptions. So don't do it. But what we do want you to make sure is that you've got a good prior knowledge on some of these key areas. So the components and functions of animals, plants, and bacterial cells. So what different features do those cells have? What are those different features for? Enzyme structure, function, and activity. Can you describe what an enzyme is, how it works, and the factors that affect them? The structure and function of DNA. Do you know what DNA is? Do you know where it's found? Do you know how it's used? The structure and function of the respiratory gas exchange system in humans, and if you studied at GCSE, in other organisms as well. The structure and function of the circulatory system, the heart and the blood vessels. What are they like? How do they work? How do they achieve their function? The mechanism of natural selection and the evidence for it. The defenses of humans against disease, and the types of pathogen which cause disease, and some specific examples of each. Now, of course, if you have, like I said at the beginning, specific areas of interest about biology that you particularly want to pursue, now's a great time to read up on them, to do your own research, to develop your own areas of specialization and interest. But these things will be a foundation to your success in the course in future. I can't wait to meet you all next year. And I'm sure that goes for your other biology teachers as well, whoever they may be. Make sure that you prepare yourselves well, work hard. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you very much.